down, I'm just gonna sit at the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away. Sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time.
Pleasant good evening to you, our valued listening audience. Welcome one, welcome all, welcome to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain, our producer for the night, none other than the great Mr. Kishno Jones. This is Tuesday, the second day of December 2025. And if it's a Tuesday, it's Maritime Matters. Our sponsors for tonight's show are the regular one-on-one pharmacy and also Island Care Pharmacy. For all your medication needs, check out my little cuz, Shantia Hill McBride, and her lovely team at one-on-one pharmacy in Nassau and Island Care Pharmacy up there in the second city of Freeport. Fill your prescription at the store or send your refills via the online site oneononepharmacy.com. That's a one-on-one pharmacy, all lowercase, all one word, .com. The three locations are East Street South, Charles Sanders Highway, and of course Explorers Way in downtown Freeport. We are secondly sponsored by Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited. At BMC, we provide a full slate of ISPS maritime security services. Good night, Auntie May. Yes, our number one fan on Maritime Matters. I say good evening. That's my Auntie May up there in Freeport. 92 years old, people, and going strong. Strong. Tonight, we engage discussion surrounding a most significant local maritime development. This is, of course, being the arrival of floating dry dock for Grand Bahama Shipyard Limited. The discussion surrounding this topic should include the following: the history of the Grand Bahama Shipyard Limited. Of course, in case you don't know, this is a world-class ship repair facility. In fact, the largest ship repair facility for cruise ships anywhere in the world. It was established in 1999, getting its first dock operational in the year 2000. Areas of expertise includes project management, detailed planning and scheduling, steelwork, pipework, mechanical, hull treatment, electrical, and various ship solutions. The Grand Bahama Shipyard Limited was started with one small dock. They call it Dock 1. Dock 1 meaning that's the first one they had, and of course, it continues to be there, and it's kind of small compared to what they're about to have, eh? That was followed by a larger one, and of course, they call it one Dock 2. That arrived somewhere around 2002, and I remember that one very well, because in 2002, shortly after that arrived, I had to go to Freeport to do the annual inspections on that dry dock, because it was Class Bahamas, and I was the Port State Inspector, plus I was the Senior Nautical Inspector, and then the appropriate person in the Bahamas to be doing that. So I went up and I was kind of, because I never inspected a dry dock before, but I was very impressed with what I saw. People were living on it. They had all kind of accommodations, and you know, that was the first one. It wasn't really built and designed for Grand Bahama Ship Limited, but they utilized it, and again, it's still there. So Dock 1 came in, followed by Dock 2, and then subsequently all. Dock 3 was added to the fleet of docks. So there are 3 dry docks that ships could come in and be lifted out of the water. And that's what dry docks do. The ship drive on them and they just ballast up and bring the ship up with it, right? In recent years, both Dock 2 and Dock 3 were eventually damaged severely and discarded. So now the shipyard for the past couple of years was bare. Just one dock, which is Dock 1. And they ventured out to get a newly constructed replacement Dock 2, which has just arrived within the past 2 weeks or so. And they're now getting that all prepared to start operation the first week of the new year, or should I say next month, same difference. And Dock 3 is currently under construction with the expected delivery for late 2026. So shortly after election, I don't know, election could be what, mid 2026, late? Yeah, it got to be by September around there, right? And then shortly thereafter, that Dock 3, which will be the largest cruise ship dry dock in the world, would be coming in. And the question is, what is a floating dock? Typically, what these floating docks, how they work, right? What they do. Technically, what they do is they gravity feed water to lower. So they probably have valves at the bottom, but they open the bottom valves and water comes in. And as water come in, the weight of the water would eventually cause, just like a ship. If a ship starts to take on water, it can sink, eh? So the dry dock is like a ship, it'll sink. And it sinks to the level where the deck, which is the middle section, that goes down deep enough so that excuse me, so that another ship or a ship would be able to maneuver into the dock once that deck goes deep enough or deeper than the keel of the ship. And once the ship is positioned, the lines are done, and they got these what you call them, horses and I don't know what you call the things where you position them so that they hold the hull in place so it don't flip over or turn to one side or whatever the case may be. They stench against the ship, right, or the hull. They put them in place and then they start to deballast, or they start to ballast, meaning they use these heavy pumps to pump that water out. And as that water comes out, the air comes in and the dock itself can start to rise because the air will cause it to come back to where it's supposed to be, eh? The water only took it down so that the ship could drive it. And once they take that water back out, the dock starts to come up with the ship on it. And so they need heavy pumps to do that, right? So Dock 1 was self-powered. In other words, it had the pumps installed on board that were able to flood those docks. They got compartments in there called void spaces. They were able to flood all the void spaces so that the dock could sink. So that the dock could come up. They would pump all the water out. And then for it to sink, all they do is they take the water, they bring water in. And gravity, the weight of the vessel, of the dock causes it to go down, right? So that's how it works. It's kind of technical when you look at it, but all these things to do is using air and water to go down and come back up with a ship on it, and then go down for the ship to come off, and then come back up for service and whatnot, and another ship could go in, and all the rest of that. So these things are bigger than the ships, and the ship could actually drive into them. Once the ship drive into them, they position the chocks and whatnot so that when it comes up, the ship comes up with it, and that's what they do. I mean, it ain't no cheap operation. Very expensive. Those docks are very expensive to purchase, and all the rest of that. Because at the end of the day, they were looking at $600 $765 million to acquire these docks, to prepare the staging area, and to do little other things like upgrade the electricity and whatnot, right? So that's Dock 1. That's our Dock 1 move. She's self-powered. And so Dock 2 and Dock 3, although Dock 3 ain't here yet, they will be using power from shoreside. So they don't need those big powerful pumps, because they're going to have electrically generated pumps that are just as powerful or even more powerful. And they would get, of course, its power from Freeport Power, or they have a substation at the Grand Bahamas shipyard that they have upgraded so that they can facilitate these two huge docks that are coming in. So the new docks, with the $665 million injected into all of this improvements, should pin the Grand Bahamas Shipyard Limited as the largest cruise ship repair operation in the entire world. And then this goes along with the fact that the three largest cruise home ports are right there on the eastern coast. They're probably within 90 miles of this dry dock yard, right? And then remember now, this dry dock is owned by the cruise ships. They had Carnival and Royal Caribbean own it first, and I think NCL just bought into it recently, right? Disney ain't paying nothing yet, but I think eventually they probably will have Disney buy into it as well, because Disney got a lot of ships too, right? And they own it, so they own this service that they need. Because now remember, every 5 years, every ship in the world got to come out of the water. Hey, listen to no foolishness. That's required by SOLAS. You got to take that ship out of the water every 5 years, at least once every 5 years. So these dry docks can't lose, because we got over 60,000 ships, well, over 50,000 for sure, nearing 60,000 registered ships that do trade worldwide that needs to come out of the water at least once every 5 years. So not only cruise ships, this Grand Bahamas Shipyard Limited deals with any type of ship: tankers, bulk carriers, container ships, car carrier, you name it. Once it name a ship, it float into them docks, and them docks bring it up, they do the work, and that's how this thing rolling, right? But it's really put there for the purpose of the cruise ship. That's why it's owned by the cruise ship companies, and that's how this thing go. So both docks will reportedly be flagged Bahamas. In other words, they are gonna be Bahamas flag. They are gonna have the Bahamas flag on them with Nassau written on the stern and all the rest of that. Because remember now, they got to be transported from China all the way to Freeport in a 6-week journey minimum. If everything goes well and the weather don't cause no big delay, that's at least 6 weeks. So during that journey, they're going to have Nassau written on the stern. They're going to be flying the Bahamas flag. And when they get here, they're going to continue to be Bahamas flag, right? So they're also going to be classed. You have the world classification societies that are responsible for ensuring the safety and pollution prevention of ships. These dry docks are like ships. Ain't going to be no different. So they're going to be classed. And, well, the first one, I think, was classed with the French Classification Society, Bureau Veritas, as we know it, as BV. And the second one that is no longer any good, I think that was Bahamas. That's the one I inspected, so that was Bahamas. Now, these other two are going to be Bahamas flagged and classed with Lloyd's Register, LR, out of London, out of England. That's the English Classification Society. And then you have others like ABS is the US Classification Society. DNV is the Holland Classification Society. And so on and so forth, right? So LR is going to be taking care of the annual surveys. And of course, the Bahamas would have inspectors to come down and do the annual inspection of these dry docks, so that they can maintain their certification. So later on, if they want to sell it, yeah, go right ahead and sell it, right? So that's how this thing is working. That's how this carrying on. And Dock 2, which has just arrived, that one is supposed to name or be named East End Dock. I don't know if they changed their mind, but that was said from last year, that the first one is going to name East End Dock, and the second one is going to name Lucayan Dock. So they all going to name docks. Hey, one is East End and one is Lucayan. I don't know where they got the name from and why, but we ain't done with it. So that already underwent. The East End Dock, which is the dock number 2, the one that just arrived, that went through a 6-week voyage from China. It was carried on board what we know as a heavy lift ship or heavy lift carrier. These are big ships that basically they use a crane and they put that dry dock on the deck of this big, huge ship, right? That is designed to carry heavy stuff. And that brought the dock all the way to Freeport. And I assume they could take it somewhere to get the dock lift off and then maneuver the dock in place at Grand Bahama Shipyard, and she would be able to be operational within a month. And that's how they roll it, right? So this East End Dock is expected, it's the smaller of the two, but it is expected to lift anything up to 93,500 tons. Now that's tons, that ain't gross tons. That's heavy. 93,000 tons. Ain't much ship out there bigger than 93. You got some now, but not much. With an overall length, or length overall as they call it, it's going to be 1,172 feet long. Well, that's what it is already. It's over 1,000 feet long. It's longer than a football field. That's the size of this thing. So, and it could take ships basically up to that length or a little more, right? With a tail hanging out a little bit. But that's how that can. Now, Dock 3, which is the one that's going to be coming the end of next year. Expected to be here near the end of next year. That is going to be, they're going to use 2 heavy lift ships to bring Dock 3 because it's too wide for one ship to carry it. There ain't no ship in the world could carry that. So what they do is they build it in a way that they cut it symmetrically in half so that one heavy lift ship could carry the first half, and then a second heavy lift ship will carry the next half, and the 2 of those ships will bring them together. So they'll be coming by heavy lift ships as well. And then, of course, when they get off Freeport, they got to take them off and maneuver them in and then bolt them back together and all. But they may do that at sea. I know how they can do it. We can find out, right? But this one is so huge because it's the biggest ever made, right? And this one is going to be mainly for those Oasis class over 200,000 gross ton ship that are out there. And then they got like 8 of them, 9 of them, and then you got other companies now trying to get over 200,000. Just about all of them will be over 200,000 within the next year or two. And then they're going to continue getting bigger and bigger. So this Drydocks will be able to deal with any one of them. And that's what this is all about. So it can carry, in essence, a lifting capacity of 130,000 tons. So this the other one is again only 93,000. This one is 130,000. So this much stronger as far as the amount of weight it could hold before it cracked, like the last one did. And get this, while the length of the last one was 1,172, this one is 1,358 feet. 1,358 feet long. So you know it's huge. And of course, it's much wider, right? So that's how the 2 new docks, Drydocks, well, one already here and one on the way here, is being built, so it could be on the way here then the next year. And what type of impact on the domestic employment would these 2 or the Grand Bahama Shipyard have or continue to have on our country, the Bahamas? With each dock arrival, the yard will impact employment exponentially. While native Bahamians will not make up a substantial part of the contractors required to do this type of work, there'll still be increased workload for locals as a spin-off from the increased work demand. The more of those docks you get, the more work it can be for everybody. So we have a lot of Bahamians coming in and out as a result of those docks. There'll always be a need for foreign workers, given that the expertise needed with ship repair being monitored by class. We said they're going to be class Lloyd Register, right? And flag, the Bahamas flag. There are different skill levels for different projects. In all cases, however, the level of skill will have to be determined and accepted by the classification society affiliated with that particular ship. So the class society, they have what you call class approved and type approved stuff, and class gotta be able to say, yes, you can do this work on this ship, or you can do this work for the ship, and we will recognize it. Otherwise, class wouldn't issue the certificates. Class is responsible for issuing all the licenses or the certificates on board these ships on behalf of the flag, which is the Bahamas. So they don't just do their own thing and yada yada. Yes, they do their own thing, but they still have to get the waiver from the Bahamas Maritime Authority, eh? And that's how it works, not only with these docks, but with all of the 1,600 plus ships we have carrying the Bahamas flag worldwide. It is anticipated that this acquisition with these two new docks should perpetuate over 1,200 jobs over the next 5 years. Excuse me. And that is extremely significant. One company, one entity, one facility is going to generate some 1,200 jobs over the next. That's significant, eh? That's something we need to praise. What is the role of our government in realizing such vast potential? Because I remember, just like I tell you all the time, the cruise ships are bringing the people to us. All we got to do is find a way to get money out of their pockets. And the government should be doing some things to assist with that, right? I don't know what all this do. I'm sure they do something, but I don't know if they do enough. Maybe you all know more than me about what the Ministry of Tourism is doing for these cruise ship passengers to want to spend more money. I don't know. But me, you all has got to be part of this, right? But as far as these dry docks are concerned, we know that over the next 5 years, there are going to be some 1,200 jobs, right? We know that most of the jobs are taken by foreigners. And I remember quite vividly, a couple of years back, when you had somebody with their cell phone taking pictures. Look at this. Hundreds of foreigners, all the Filipinos and the Indians and the Ukrainians, people who come in to work contracts at the shipyard, and they're just taking pictures like this such a big deal. This happens all over the world, eh? With dry docks. Because if we don't have the expertise in our country to do class approved work, then we can't do it. But now the shipyard has been here already for over 20 years. I think this year from 99, that's a long time. Because 2005, that's 26 years. They have been present here. And you ask, what have our government done to create pathways for Bahamians to get in on some of this work? This one contract called for 600-700 workers, right? And they're gonna have like 3 contracts going on one time. So in essence, while they only temporary jobs for that contract, they bring in at least 90% of them are foreigners. You know why? Because we don't have the Bahamian expertise in those areas to come and do class approved work. We may say, oh, we got plenty of welders. Hey, this ain't just welding. When you're dealing with pipe welding, when you're dealing with the, call it the shell or the what do you call it, the outcoat of the steel plates that go on the hull of the ship, they're not just ordinary steel plates with the same thickness all around like tiles. No, you get this corner 1 inch thick, the next corner 1/4 inch thick, that side over there 3/4 inch thick. So how you can fit this in now with the original hull, because you crop piece out, you gotta fit that in, and you gotta really know how to do that. That ain't no regular welder, and certain type of material you weld with, and how the line gotta be on the weld. Hey, classes, make sure everything up to standard, and if you're getting it wrong, you'll be wasting material. So we need to find a pathway to get our Bahamian citizens, and we ain't no dummies, we can learn these things, but we just need a pathway to get some of our welders or some of our potential welders and go to the high school and find them from there, right? Into training that can expose them to this type of welding. And that's what the government should be looking to do. The government got consultants, well, not really technically consultants, but they got the whole Bahamas Maritime Authority at their disposal that has some experts in there, in their technical branch, who could find out where Bahamians could go to acquire this kind of exposure, right? And the shipyard itself can assist with that if the government reaches out to that extent. And this is a role for the Bahamas Maritime Authority, you know. Because under the Act, it very specifically states that part of the role of the Bahamas Maritime Authority is to create and expand opportunities in the maritime field for Bahamians. So you can't duck it. You can run, but you can't hide. 21, 25 years now. How many Bahamians we can say that the BMA created a path to ensure that they could get on some of these ships to do fitting and welding work and pipe work and stuff like that, so that when they finish they could go into the shipyard and be certified to do classification society work. Or they can work with companies affiliated with class in the meantime, so that when they domicile in Freeport, the class could just, the companies could just say, okay, this one is class approved, we could use this one and we could use that one. We need to be very deliberate in setting up a program where, and you don't have enough people in Freeport now, we talking about the whole Bahamas, especially in Nassau, where we could provide for a pathway to have working level people who are welders become fitters and class approved fitters, so that when these projects come up and they need these hundreds of people in Freeport, they could go right there and or they could be domiciled in Freeport and start doing these things and be very, very needed. So that's really technically, in my opinion, the role that our government, they need to look ahead. You don't only look to 5 years, or 5 years, we know, because, hey, look here. This thing already been here for 20, 25 years. Right? We didn't see it be here for another 50, 60, 100, 200 years. All us will be gone time is this move, if it ever move. Because again, this sitting right on the husk of the 3 largest cruise home ports in the world. And they need their ships to be in a position to just go and dry dock and don't be taken too far off course, so that when they finish they could go right back into their cruises, eh? So since most of the affiliated contractor services will be class certified functions, the companies to benefit would be, for the most part, internationally positioned firms. The idea should be to make provisions to have Bahamians trained up to the standards that these international contractors can utilize. They want to use Bahamians. You know, it costs them to bring someone in, got to house them, got to feed them, got to transport them, and still got to pay them. It got to be cheaper for them to use Bahamians if Bahamians can certify to do those work. And our government should therefore galvanize affiliated entities such as the BMA, LJM, and BTVI, etc., to ensure that appropriate training programs are implemented for natives to engage these necessary certifications. We are loaded, and we are heavily laden with information surrounding this timely topic, people. We are talking maritime. You are listening to Maritime Matters. At this point, we move to our first break, and when we return, we will engage tonight's maritime discussions. Listen, people, you don't want to miss this one, because you know how we can be carrying on. Bad. Thank you.
At Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, we offer first-class maritime security services throughout the Bahamas and the wider Caribbean. As experts in maritime security, we specialize in production of ISPS assessments and plans, verification audits, certified familiarization training, and port security consultancy, just to name a few. Our services also include provision of a security force to maintain all required ISPS facility security compliance. For all your maritime security needs, visit us today in Nassau at our East Street South location or in Freeport in the Kipling Building. Call us at 392-3515 or follow us on all social media platforms. Bahamas Maritime Connection, your leader in maritime security. Let's help you make the connection. At One-on-One Pharmacy, our friendly staff is ready to serve you. Visit us today for all your prescription and over-the-counter needs at our East Street South or Charles Saunders Highway locations. We're open Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and from 9 to 4 on Sundays. In a rush? Send your refill scripts online at oneononepharmacy.com or ask about our convenient pickup service. One-on-One Pharmacy, providing personal health care with people at heart.
Sitting in the morning.
Son, I'll be sitting in the evening comes. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain. I'm joined tonight by my able assistant host, Mr. Kishno Jones. And we're talking $665 million upgrade as the first dry dock arrives, Grand Bahama Shipyard Limited. You are listening to Maritime Matters, and on this show, we talk maritime. Maritime Matters as weekly at 17:05. That's 5:05 p.m. every Tuesday here on Love 97 FM. The purpose of our show is to highlight persons that made significant contributions to the maritime in the Bahamas and to sensitize Bahamians of opportunities in the maritime sectors, like the opportunities that are going to be kicking up and have been kicking up for the past 25 years at the Grand Bahama Shipyard Limited. We also cover current maritime issues from the domestic and international maritime fields, but not tonight. The number to reach us is 326-8255. That's 326-8255. To hear a replay of the show or any of our previous shows, simply hit us up at any time via the YouTube page. That's Maritime Matters Bahamas. Just go to YouTube on your electronic device and type into the search box Maritime Matters Bahamas. That's how you say I love you, Maritime Matters Bahamas. Now, I'm looking for some calls. Nobody want to talk about the Grand Bahama Shipyard Limited. Nobody want to talk about all those opportunities. Nobody want to talk about whether we can go to high school and find people to get out there so that they could go down the pathway and train to be fitters and welders on these big cruise ships and all these other big ships and make big bucks. Well, then don't complain when all the foreigners here and we ain't got no Bahamians to take on the work. How foolish is that, eh? 326-8255 is the number to call. The history of the Grand Bahama Shipyard Limited, as I said earlier, is a world-class shipping facility. It was established from 1999. That's many, many years ago. And they basically focus on planning and scheduling of ships or projects for ships. Because, you know, when a ship come into the shipyard for a dry dock project, they're not coming there to try and find out what's wrong with them, you know. No, this thing got to be planned months in advance. The items needed have to be procured months in advance, and then they're just sitting on the shipyard ahead of time waiting for the ship to reach. When the ship reach, they don't want anything to delay, because every day is a whole couple $1,000 that they are utilizing that dock. So time is money. Plus they want to get back out there, because if they're moving, the ship ain't making no money. All right? So this is how they roll it. So they deal with planning and scheduling of those projects. They got to deal with a lot of steel work. And when they say steel work, all the ship is made out of steel. Just about every commercial ship today is made. They don't make ship out of wood no more, you know. At least not for commercial purposes. Because they wouldn't be able to meet the standards or requirements for firefighting and containing fire in a space for at least an hour before it spread out of that space, because wood ain't going to do that. So we understand why they got to be made out of steel, right? So there's plenty steel work that have to happen in building ships and in repairing and maintaining ships. Pipe work. What do you mean by pipe work? Pipe, now, you know, you got to move fluids, liquid. You got to move fuel around from different tanks to get to the engine and the generator and other machinery on board the ship that uses fuel. You got to move fresh water around, right, to keep certain things serviced, and then fresh water to use for the flushing toilets and that type. Just like a house, right? Especially cruise ships, man. Come on, you got more toilets than type. And you got to move oil around for transmission purpose. You got hydraulic fluid and thing for moving heavy pumps and this type of thing and that type of thing. All of them need pipes. And these pipes run through. You need pipe for the firefighting system. They need these nice pipes that, and then from time to time, the pipes is bare. The pipes is rust. The pipe is pitted. And those pipes got to be replaced. So when you're replacing those pipes, you got to know how to weld them together so that they don't leak. So that when the ship start rocking up and down, they don't crack. And all the rest of that. That's why these work are so important. And that's why people got to be properly certified to do these kind of things. Right? The mechanical side of it. Because you got sometimes they overhauling engines and generators and air conditioned systems and that type of thing on ships. So you need mechanics on hand to do these kind of work. Hull treatment. Now, of course, when a ship is on dry dock, that's the opportune time to sandblast. Well, they don't sandblast no more, but to blast the hull, whether they're using water or sand or whatever it is used that's environmentally safe. They blast the hull, which means they put in pressure, just like how when you're housing in paint for many years, and you got all them flaky paint and stuff, you just water blast it first. Why you do that? So you could wake up all them things and break up all them things, so they wouldn't be a problem when you're ready to put your prime and paint on, eh? Same thing with hulls of ships. They got all these barnacles growing up. Remember now, these ships live in water. So for that purpose, they need to make sure that ship is properly blasted, properly treated. The anti-fouling paint's got to be applied, and then they paint them properly. And you're talking about, I tell you, some of these ships is over 1,000 feet long, and they got a couple decks in the hull, like 5-6 decks. So you're talking about a vast area that got to be blasted, that got to be primed, that got to be painted, that got to be, man, let me tell you something. It's so much work. And these things are done under supervision. You can't just go there and say, oh, let's go, this fella, he can paint good, man. Let him go paint. No, sir. You better know what you're doing, because when that ship go back in the water, it's another 5 years before they want to take that out. And if you ain't that penny applied properly, you know the cost to take one of them out of the water? They get flagged because the paint flaking off or this. You cost them a whole heap of money. So they ain't taking that risk, right? And that's how this thing go. So we go down to the fact that Dock 2 and Dock 3, they were damaged. One was damaged by a hurricane, and the next one got damaged because they had the one big Oasis class ship. Was it Oasis? No, it wasn't Oasis. It was Allure of the Sea, I think it was. Anyway, I may be wrong with the name, right? But it was one of those Oasis class ships. Those 227,000 gross tons, and because it was so heavy, the deck or the bottom section of the dry dock just crack, and start to cave in. Remember that? So that's why they needed to make a much bigger one and a much stronger one. So now they straight with that. And because that happened, those two docks are now being replaced. So the shipyard could get up and going again up to the 100% strength, where they could really be busy, they could really be making money, and they could need plenty people to work. So let's get some Bahamians. Let's look at the next 10 years. And even if we could have 10 Bahamians in 10 years qualified to do this classification certified type of work. And then 10 years after that, we may have 100. Eh? And then 1,000. So there's no reason why we can't plan now, since we know the shipyard ain't going nowhere. And the government taking measures to create this pathway for Bahamians to be properly qualified to take up a lot of this work that is going to be happening on an ongoing basis. And we say the typical dry dock basically just take in water, pump out water. So take in water to lower itself, it pump out water to float again or rise. And they have the one with a self-powered, which is the small dock number 1. But the other two, they're going to have electrical feed from the electrical substation, which has been upgraded before this one even reached, to be able to provide enough power for these two added, because they need a lot of power. Those things are huge, heavy, and when they got a ship on top of them, and them pumps got to be working to take that water out, that's going to be some heavy pumping, eh? And those new docks, that's how they could be operating. The impact, again, on domestic employment. With each of these docks arriving, the yard will really pick up, because I can tell you, when those two docks went bad a couple of years back, there was a big hurrah as to whether the shipyard's going to even survive. But like most other things, you need a shipyard in this region. You need a shipyard near to, and this is the best place in the world to have it. So we just had to dig deep, get our heads back in the game, and plan to get these two docks replaced. Now they're being replaced. So we got to now dig deep. The government need to reach out to those entities so that at the end of the day, we could say, this is what it's going to be. So that impact can create jobs on top of jobs. And not only for people who live in Freeport, because we need to do the basic thing. We need to go back to high schools. We need to get students who basically don't have no plans for what they want to do when they get out of school to know that there's an option here for you. You ain't want to be too academic because you ain't into books like that. You good with doing things with your hand. Now you need some academics, but if you're good with doing things with your hand, if the Filipino could go out there and learn how to weld pipes and plates and that type of thing, then you could do the same. I don't think they're smarter than us. As a matter of fact, I think we're smarter than them for the most part. You know, we could all our own with most people in the world. So let's get our Bahamians from grade 10. Now we have a Maritime Cadet Corps, right? And our Maritime Cadet Corps started out, and I can tell you because when it started out in around 2003, I was deeply involved in getting it off the ground. Along with Mr. Dudley Martinborough, who was at the time the person brought into the system to get it up and going. Did a dandy job. And Mr. Martinborough and I planned out the schools that we would go to and do presentations. The details we're going to have in the presentations. The school we're going to use for them to attend classes once they join up with the system. I even went all the way to PEI. This first time I went to Prince Edward Island, right, in Canada. To look. I was there for a whole week just going through what Holland College does. I audited Holland College to the extent where I was seeing how this college is going to implement new programs to tie in with what we want these students to have at the end of the day. And you know what? A lot of people don't know this, but Holland College was not designed at that time to issue any international certification for ratings. They could have issued certification for Transport Canada, which means it's really only for domestic. And we don't want Bahamians, I said to them, we don't need Bahamians to be coming all the way over here to get Transport Canada certification, and they can't use that nowhere else in the world, and they can be in Canada. So we want to know if you could do the STCW programs that we need for them to be certified as rating forming part of a navigation watch and engineering forming part of a navigation watch. You could do some able seaman courses. You could do some wipers and oilers and all the rest of that. Courses that at the waking level, so that the bulk of our students entering the Bahamas Maritime Cadet Corps could have an avenue when they get out of high school to come into Holland College and get certified, so that once they get that certification, they could join international ships. And at the same time, I remember this, the baby of Minister Glennis Hannah Martin. She was the minister that grabbed me on the side and said to me, Captain Bain, we need to do something for these students. I want to start a program. Tell me. And she asked me to do a projection of what students would need from the time they get out of school to get on a ship as a waker. And she wasn't thinking, Glennis, and she's my buddy, right? I could talk but her, because that's me and her go like that, right? She wasn't thinking at the time that we need these students to go to school and get certified without, at the end of the day, having a job that they could waltz into. So at the same time, she started to engage, and she told me this, that's how I know, the ship owners, because they had a ship owners association that was kind of part and parcel with the BMA, where all owners that wanted their ship to carry the Bahamas flag, or that were flag Bahamas, and there was over 1,700 of them back then, right? They joined us. They started an association. Where they would put put stipend or put money into. And then the association would decide what they want to do with this money, because all the ship owners put a couple dollars into it. And I think it depended on how much tons you have. You put $1 per ton, whatever the case may be. I don't know the full calculation of how they contribute to that ship owners association fund. But the ship owners used to meet often enough. And I think the first meeting that Minister Hannah Martin went to in London, when she returned, she said to me, Captain Bain, I have a commitment from the ship owners. They're saying to me that they will give Bahamian students priority if they can get whatever certification is needed for the international fleet. And that's all I needed to hear. But somehow the government changed and that gone down the tube, right? I know she came back later on, but I wasn't there no more. And so after seeing all of this developing, Dudley and I decided we gotta get these students interested in maritime. Because most of the schools I started to go to, these students ain't had a clue what maritime was all about. And in doing the presentations, I just got them to understand certain things, right? And I could go off on a tangent with this one, because we really need to get this going, right? I said to the students, I said, look, what you need to do is understand how much money you could make in this industry. You know, they like to hear about money. And you ask them, how much money your parents make? How much money you want to make at the end of the day? And they telling you figures, and you'll be like, oh, okay, you could make more than that. And I explained to them that although you are starting as a rating as the lowest level on the ship, once you sign onto the ship for 6 months or 8 months or whatever the case may be, that $1,000 a month, which people may say, oh, all I work you on the ship every day and that's all you make, you don't have to spend. You don't have to spend that. You may spend $200 out of that, because most of the time, and most of the ships are cargo ships. We even ain't talking about cruise ships. Most of the ships, you got about less than 300 cruise ships in the whole world. And probably less than 200 now, right? Because they're getting huge and they're plentiful like they used to be. One time ago, there's like 600 of them. So if you got less than 200 cruise ships, and you get over 50,000 registered ships, you get over 50,000 cargo ships. So why you want to work on a cruise ship if you got over 50,000 cargo ships? And the cargo ships are a little different, you know. Because I can tell you, I got daughters who work on the cargo ship and the cruise ship, right? The cargo ship, when you get on them, you do ocean navigation. You see, because the cruise ships, they may do an ocean crossing twice a year, right? When they reposition in the ship, if necessary. And that ocean crossing, they carrying passengers for the most part. But the cargo ships, they cross in the Atlantic and the Pacific, and then they going worldwide all the time. So on a routine basis, you got to be doing celestial navigation. Back then, not nowadays, I don't know if these check, because they got GPS now, and then they always know where they are without doing celestial navigation. But back in the day, before the age of ongoing GPS feeds, because you know they had the sat nav first. And the sat nav, you had to wait half hour for satellite to pass so you could get a fix. But now they got constant GPS Latin long. You always know where you are. So, and I think that one over. I don't think you can ever have to use celestial navigation again. But celestial navigation back in the day was the only thing you had to depend on, because once you get like 30, 40, 50 miles away from land going into the Atlantic on either side, you have nothing else that could feed you navigation information, right? Because you're in the middle of the ocean and there ain't nothing out there that could reach you. So the navigator had to be skilled enough to apply the heavenly bodies to take effects. And that wasn't easy. As a matter of fact, that separated the goats from the sheep. Right? Because you doing navigation when you could get a celestial navigation fix on a chart. Because the calculation is so intricate. And you got to get up during twilight to shoot those stars. You're actually using the stars to say, give you a line of position on and they don't have coastal charts that they put them on. They put them on celestial charts. And you got to get more than one star because you guys set up your star finder. Anyway, we get into too much details, right? But celestial navigation was necessary back then. And this is what you learn when you're on cargo ships, because cruise ships didn't really do those crossings on a routine basis. And you got to do voyage planning, because you need to know which routes you could take, when you could change course to try and maintain that rum line for your long distance sailing. It's sailing something like flying plane. You need to try and stay on it with the rum line. The rum line is a line that once you're on that between 2 points, that's your shortest distance. You burn less fuel, you get there quicker. But if you get off track of your rum line, it can take you long to get back to where you need to go to get back on the rum. So you try and maintain your rum line course all the way throughout your voyage. So you got to know when to make certain changes. And you got to plan all this. You got to pull out all those different charts you got to use from the time you leave where you're going till the time you get where you're going. You got to know what all lights you got to look for. You got to, man, let me tell you something. Navigation it wasn't easy. These days, GPS make it a dream. And like you don't even have to worry about nothing. And then you got chart plotters where they will show you where you are on the way at all times. Even they had radar back in, but radar can't be out in the middle of the ocean, no how, right? Anyway, I digress too far, right? Let's get back to big people business. So, Dudley Martinborough and I, at the behest of Minister Glennis Anna Martin, was able to go out and galvanize these school students until we had hundreds interested. And we got, I think, Batelco and somebody else to and then we got some bus drivers who we would pay because we had a budget to get the students from certain school and bring them in one place. And then we had some Defense Force retired officers who were very crucial, very critical at that stage for starting up this program, because they were able to use their experience and teach coastal navigation. Teach certain rope knots and this type of thing that seamen would do on board ships. Teach a little bit of engineering. And the program started to do very well. And eventually, that program took leaps and bounds to where it is now, where you have thousands of people interested in joining the Maritime Cadet Corps. And we have people coming out of that system, going to LJM and joining ships. And as you know, LJM is our premier maritime institute, where people train to be ship's officers. And they have ratings training too, but I in my opinion, they need to expand that, because you have more ratings out there than officers. So why focus more on the officer side, which means you get less people joining or less jobs out there for officers. But you still need good officers, eh? So yeah, you need that. So the Bahamas Maritime Cadet Corps program is a feeder system that's already in place. And if we were to channel or make that connection between the Maritime Cadet Corps, and I'm sure it to some extent is made already, and LJM, Maritime Academy, and incorporate a program where the fellow from high school could know from grade 10 that he could venture into a course that could prepare him for a job at the Grand Bahamas shipyard, that could prepare him for a job on a tugboat in Freeport Harbor, that could prepare him for a job on a cruise ship, prepare him for a job on a bulk carrier, on a container carrier, on a tanker. Because we got all these on our flag. We need to be deliberate in making this happen. And this can't be done basically without the BMA. Well, it could be, but I mean, the BMA needs to step up. Because the BMA just don't check for these students. Yes, they contribute some monies to the LJM, but do they audit the LJM to the extent that they're saying to them, you need to incorporate programs that can solidify the type of work that is available in the Bahamas for seafarers, like those hundreds of people coming in for jobs at Grand Bahama Shipyard? This is where we need to go. And give the students that choice, that option, that pathway. Because the student can't do it on their own. They need guidance. But more importantly, they need a pathway. And the Bahamas Maritime Authority, with its obligation under the Act to create and expand opportunities for Bahamians in the maritime sector, they should be that catalyst to ensure that they're creating and expanding opportunities for these school students who, by way of the Bahamas Maritime Cadet Corps program, which comes under their arms, and the LJM, which comes under their they're required to audit that institution, and plus they sponsor that institution on an annual basis. They have the in-house expertise to understand how these students will be able to get a license. They issue licenses. They know the requirement to be able to get a license issued to them. They can reach out and touch bases with the Grand Bahama Shipyard Limited, which will assist them in any way they need to know and exactly what jobs they have available on an ongoing basis. Now, I spoke with one of the head honchos, well, one of the honchos at the Grand Bahama, my boy, I call him up. I said, look here, man, what needs to happen to get Bahamians to get onto some of these jobs? You know what he told me? He said, boy, Glenn, we reach out on numerous occasions to LJM. We reach out to the BMA because we have a program. And we've always had programs where we basically bringing in, they call them cadets. Not cadets, what they call them? Apprentices. We bring in apprentices. And we found now that there's an institution in the UK. It's either up in Scotland somewhere or Manchester somewhere. It's not in London area, right? It's up north somewhere. Wait, cold, right? Boy, I can tell you, if I'd been at Dartmouth in the south, and Dartmouth was cold, I can imagine I wouldn't want to be one of them going up there, right? But some people will do it, right? Because it's opportunities. And they have identified an institution that gives you a 4-month course on pipe fitting and plate welding and that type of thing. And you could do even more. So my thing is, the government can give scholarships, or we in the Bahamas, we can set up within our own national maritime institution called LGM and bring in lecturers and trainers from other countries who can teach these things. They could be retired teachers or whatever the case may be, who used to teach these things, and have a program right here in the Bahamas. You know, about hundreds of jobs. Look at all the mail boats we have. You know, they need welding on an ongoing basis. Look at all those tanks at Boko, and all the welding jobs need to be done at other facilities in the country. You can't have too much welders. You can't have too much fitters. So, when are we, the Bahamians, going to focus on creating that pathway by way of the BMA, the LJM, and the BDVI if necessary, to have the 10th grader know in advance that we have programs for you to come and join while you're in the Maritime Cadet Corps program, or when you finish with the Maritime, because we got thousands of people in the Maritime Cadet Corps that all of them don't want to do Maritime, but the bulk of them would like to do Maritime. I remember a gentleman came to my office before COVID, about 6-7 years ago. And I found out who he was, because this young man and one of my classmates, this was her son. And after I met him, and she told me, oh, he went to Holland College, and I said, but I bet at Holland College. And this guy, and he came and made him talk, and he was like, wow, you and he was so shocked, right? But he was telling me at the time that he gone to Holland College, got certified. He went out to sea once on Campbell Shipping, which was Dockendale at the time, I think. And after that, he came home for 3 months, and he could have never gotten another berth to get on the ship, because they were reserving space for the people that they sponsored to do the program. And he was telling me about these techniques. He was the one that sponsored people because he went to Holland College, right? And I was like, but this don't make no sense. I mean, here it is, you in the maritime field. We solicited you to get into the maritime field. You here, but you can't even get a job on a ship, and we got over 1,600 ships under our flag. That make any sense to you? And this is what some of these students are going through. And I remember both my daughters was in the maritime field, and what they had to go through to get on a ship. And the kind of rejection they had from the BMA personnel in London, who were saying, oh, y'all have it too good now. You want us to do everything for you. We want spoon. But they really wasn't checking. And the world needs to know that they're not pulling their weight when it comes to creating and expanding opportunities in the Bahamas to the extent that they could. I said they don't do nothing. They do a little something. They don't even want to start to look. Anyway, I get on them too much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I can leave the BMA right now as we run to this break. And when we get back, we will be wrapping up on how we can move this country forward with the Grand Bahama Shipyard Limited, the opportunities with this dock that just reaching a bigger one that is to come next year. We don't need our authorities, and I see that's why I don't like fool with governments them too much, because governments change, but the people in position in these authorities and ministries and ministries as well, and departments, They don't hardly change. Especially these PSS and them. And then they really don't, some of them don't care, you know. Why, let me tell you, I've been in the system and I know. Anyway, you're listening to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain. We're going to run to our second break. We am ably assisted by Mr. Kishno Jones, who's on the controls, wheels of steel, the man of the hour. Thank you very much.
At Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, we offer first-class maritime security services throughout the Bahamas and the wider Caribbean. As experts in maritime security, we specialize in production of ISPS assessments and plans, verification audits, certified familiarization training, and port security consultancy, just to name a few. Our services also include provision of a security force to maintain all required ISPS facility security compliance. For all your maritime security needs, visit us today in Nassau at our East Street South location or in Freeport in the Kipling Building. Call us at 392-3515 or follow us on all social media platforms. Bahamas Maritime Connection, your leader in maritime security. Let's help you make the connection. At One-on-One Pharmacy, our friendly staff is ready to serve you. Visit us today for all your prescription and over-the-counter needs at our East Street South or Charles Saunders Highway locations. We're open Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and from 9 to 4 on Sundays. In a rush? Send your refill scripts online at oneononepharmacy.com or ask about our convenient pickup service. One-on-One Pharmacy, providing personal health care with people at heart.
Sitting in the morning sun, I'll be sitting when the evening comes, watching the ships roll in, then I'll watch them roll away again. Yeah. I'm sitting on the
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Maritime, tick, 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 tick. Matters. I am your host again, Captain Glenn Bain, and our discussion for the night. We are talking Grand Bahama Shipyard Limited. And those guys injected 665 million smackaroos into two docks, two dry docks, the staging area for the dry docks when they get in, the little upgrade on the electrical substation at their site, and some training and all the rest of that good stuff, right? And that's what's going on now. And my thing is, are we preparing our people? Because on a given day, when this shipyard has a cruise ship being undergoing a project, a dry docking project, sometimes they be there for 6 weeks, sometimes they be there for like 2-3 months, sometimes they be there for 3 weeks, right? But the project, when they're having a full survey, like the 5-year dry docking, they have like 600 people coming into the yard. 600 people. One shift. And it's like ongoing, people coming in. And then when lunchtime come, you see hundreds of people going out for lunch, coming back in right after lunch, and then when they're getting off, hundreds of people. And then you got hundreds of people coming on that night for the night shift. And I could tell you, I have seen this, not with nobody else, with my own two eyes. My granddaughter would say, "Oh, go be seen on my own two eyes." Who else are you seen with? I have seen this happen. And again, I say somebody was saying, "Oh, look at all these foreigners! Look here! Hundreds of foreigners." Yeah, we have to have hundreds of foreigners because we don't have hundreds of Bahamians certified to be able to do the job. And the job pays well. And we got some people working as busboys, working in food stores. You even got people working as bank tellers. They can't make this kind of money. I ain't talking mainly men. We ain't want women them going out there doing a bunch of welding. Not that women can't do it. But you know, sometimes you can lift heavy plates and you need man strength sometimes to do some of these kind of work, right? So I say some women is stronger than some of these little big fellas. Because we know some of them are. But we need them kind of women if we have women, right? Them big, strapping, strong women who could pick up niggas them and throw them all over the place. Yes, we do have some of them. So y'all don't call me now talking about, oh, you shouldn't talk about women that way. No. I have people in my family who I tell you, they man, look here, some of them defend me. And it come to throwing niggas out. So ladies and gentlemen, again, we have a very large Bahamas Maritime Cadet Corps program that I think is going well under the direction of Mr. Clayton Curtis and my boy Ken Sands and Brother Hanna and you know, these are people from the Defense Force who keep this on a daily basis rolling and being perpetuated. But where are we going to be sending these students at the end of the day? Do we have full pathway with a flag of over 1,600 ships? And with that flag of over 1,600 ships, I don't think we have not even 100 Bahamians working within that flag. I'm not saying we should have 1,600. But come on, we should have 300-400 people working in there easy. If we do things properly, if we like we have the interests, but we don't have the pathway. And this is always my cry. The BMA needs to do a little more in creating that, and the BMA ain't gonna do it unless the Minister of Transport get on them, you know. And because we got some people who are permanent fixes on the BMA board. They've been there from day one and they're still there. And they fail year after year after year to put pressure on the staff of the BMA to ensure that we have a pathway for, well, some of them they pay for Bahamians say. But that's beside the point. The reality is we have these boards in place with these mandates. The mandate says to create and expand opportunities for Bahamians in the maritime sector. You have already, because you put the Bahamas Maritime Cadet Corps in place. That happened from the BMA and the ministry. Well, really it was Ms. Glennis and a Martin idea. But that's the baby of the BMA. You can't expect the minister to run it, eh? And it's being run very well by Mr. Clayton Curtis. That's the name, Clayton Curtis? Yeah, that's your name, right, Clayton? And his well ably assisted defense force persons who retired or some of them still, I think all of them retired from the defense force, and they doing a very good job. But what happens when a student is graduating from school? They already been exposed to maritime. They already did the STCW Force Safety Corps modules, but they just now need to be channeled into an area that, first of all, they can get on some of our ships. Because once you can get on the ship and you can start sailing, and as a rating, I'm not talking about officers, yes, it's easy for officers, but we got more people with the potential to be ratings than officers. So we want to get some ratings on our ships now. And at least 10 to 20% of the Maritime Cadet Corps should be able to get on one of the ships when they come out of high school. Based on the 3 years they did. And maybe a short course at L, and they could do this course at LJM while they at the Maritime Institute. I mean, in the Maritime Cadet Corps. So that by the time they finish, they certified. And they could join a Bahamian so long, and I tell people, so long as they are prepared to accept the level of pay, again, which is some $800 to $1,000 a month. But guess what? You also get what they call fixed overtime. That's 2 hours a day extra pay. And then you get what they call extra overtime if they need you to do some extra work. So in essence, you could make anywhere between $1,000 and $1,500 a month, and you eating 3 square meals every day free. They're giving you uniform to wear, your coverall or whatever, while you're on the ship. You visiting ports all over the world. You getting to see the world. You mixing in with people, other nationalities, and getting to learn about their countries while they working with you on board the ship. When you finish your first tour and you got your $5,000 in the bank, right? And you go on a second tour, and when you come back, you get $10,000 in the bank. You get more than enough for down payment of a brand new car. You know, the bank like give loan for cars. So when you're now you're blinging like a big chief. And you only been on two deployments. And as you continue, after 5 years, you got 50, 60 grand in the bank. Because that's money you ain't really need to spend. You ain't gotta go to the movies to carry, your little girlfriend or your little, and after 5 years, you get enough to pay down on your 3-bed, 2-bath house with money still in the bank. And you're only 23, 24, 22. How much people before they get 25 years old in this country could say, I have a brand new car and a brand new house in my name, and I still got money in the bank, and I still making plenty money? This is what you could do as a rating. So imagine if you're an officer making twice that amount, but you're still spending all that time at sea. And you're learning how to work on these ships so that when you're ready to start your family, you find yourself a little monkey. She like you, you like her. You want to get married and start a family. So you get married, you start your family. You ain't want to be going to sea like that no more. But you don't have your car and your house. But you don't mind getting a job as a welder or a pipe fitter or one of those things at Grand Bahamas Shipyard. Or if you was doing engineering, you could get a job at BPL. There's so much opportunities and things you could do when you come off that ship because you had that international exposure. You have that international certification. You are wanted. And the only thing need to happen is the BMA needs to be deliberate in creating that pathway for you, 10 grader, 11 grader, 12th grader, LJM student, to get on a ship in a certain area. And they could carve out niche areas for people who really want to take up those jobs at the Grand Bahamas Shipyard Limited. Because they ain't going nowhere. What my boy Mr. Lincoln Boehner, it ain't going, it coming. Right? Why we down to 5 minutes already? Gee. Ladies and gentlemen, 328, 326, 825. I don't know why y'all even call me tonight, right? Some people that may do biggity. I ain't biggity, You ain't gonna call me to try and get me rival up. You could call me to say, boy, you right. We need to do better in this country. Not only in maritime, but in a lot of areas, we need to work with our youth and create pathways for them to get into some of these areas that we have foreigners, that we don't need to have foreigners. And I can start talking about those areas. But we ain't the same about that, right? This is about the $665 million the Grand Bahamas Shipyard Limited has injected or pumped into getting new docks, 2 new docks, and upgrading their facility so that they could have hundreds and hundreds of jobs available to Bahamians that can certify. And about the government arm dealing with maritime to ensure that some of our people can follow a pathway to get the certification to work on some of these jobs. And that's where we need to go with this. And we have the Cadet Corps with a pool of people, students already. We have the LJM institution with courses, trainers, subsidy from government and the Bahamas Maritime Authority and some private organizations. So why isn't this happening? Why do I have to preach about these type of things over and repeatedly, but it's still ain't happening? You think I wasted my time? I don't think so. Because boy, if I wasted my time, that's too bad. Because I could be looking out for the youth in this country. When I come to maritime, I might can't do much with other areas, but maritime for sure. I could be looking out for the youths. So should we recap and talk about the Grand Bahamas Shipyard being a world-class ship repair facility? Was going on now for 25 years plus. Will be going on for another 125 years plus. Also be gone. They deal with, managing dry docking projects, planning and scheduling the dry dock work, dealing with steel work, pipe. They got mechanical workshop, electrical workshop, all kind of big workshops where they're doing pumps and this and that for these ships, right? They deal with the hull. They blast the hull. They repaint the hull, and they sound the hull to see if it's strong in this area. If they got a crop out, you know what crop out mean, right? Anyway, too late for that. We only got 1 minute to go before we got to close shop. So let's just say they do a lot of things, and there's a lot of exposure to be gained from working there, etc., etc. And they started with one little dock, then they had two, then they had three. 2 and 3 got damaged. Then eventually they now going to replace them with bigger and better, and they pump all this money into this operation, so they can be there for a long time, right? What else to say about that? The impact that it have as far as employment is huge, vast. People coming from all over the world. And they got buses and buses of people coming in every morning, mainly foreigners. And we ask why? Why? Because we don't have Bahamians who could do what them foreigners doing. Because our authorities ain't creating a pathway and giving Bahamians the exposure to be able to do it. And I tell you that. And I'm sticking with that. Let them say dying true, because they know that's true. Right? So we need the government to put the pressure on the Bahamas Maritime Authority Board, who has the obligation to ensure that the Bahamas Maritime Authority expand and create for opportunities for Bahamian in the maritime sector to be doing these type of things. So ladies and gentlemen, that's our show for tonight. Look like nobody wanted to talk to me tonight. I don't have no problem with that. I ain't catching no feelings. Everything cool. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain. Our producer for tonight, the great Mr. Kishno Jones. Our sponsors for tonight, Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, and then we have my little cousin Shantia with her one-on-one pharmacy, couple places in Nassau, and Island Care Pharmacy, downtown Freeport. I say good night again to Auntie May, my number one fan, but she don't call, but I know she's listening. That's my girl. And ladies and gentlemen, to you out there listening to Maritime Matters, I say thank you for doing so. And please continue to tune in to our show every Tuesday. If you want a copy of this show, and you probably don't, you probably do, then hit us up on YouTube at Maritime Matters Bahamas, and we'll be uploading a copy in a matter of hours. With that, as always, we say Maritime Matters.
Look like nothing's gonna come my way, so I'm just gonna sit on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away. darker bay, wasting time. Look like nothing's gonna change. Everything still remains the same. I can't do what 10 people tell me to do, so I guess I'll remain the same. Sitting here resting my bones, and this loneliness won't leave me alone. This 2,000 miles I roam just to make this dock my home. Now I'm just gonna sit at the dock of a bay, watching the tide roll away. Sitting on the dock of a bay, wasting time.
One people, one music, your station. Love 97.
It's crying time again. You're gonna leave me. I can see that faraway look in your eyes. I can tell by the way